Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
A very happy Christmas to you. You're listening to Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. Season's greetings from me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And it's lovely to be here. A bit closer to Christmas than we thought it would be, actually. We're a little bit later releasing, but we haven't had too many emails and letters of complaint, so I think we're going to be okay.
Since some of us decided that they wanted to bring new life into the world, a podcast has become quite a lot trickier. But we thought we'd try and finish with a bang for this year, have a little bit of a regroup, give ourselves Christmas, New Year off, bit of January. Hopefully, very hopefully, normal service will be resumed and we'll start getting back on a tighter release schedule.
And normal service should hopefully mean that you're hearing from us once every 3 weeks again, with our usual features and interviews and one-off features, all the stuff you've become used to listening to on Daftaboutcraft. Now, this episode we have got, and we pride ourselves on this, is finding breweries that are new to the scene and sort of championing them a little bit. And we've got one for you this time from York, and it's called Trig Brewery. And we'll be speaking to Trig during this episode for a look at what on earth makes somebody start a brewery in this day and age, why they do it, and what the motivation is, and where they hope it will take them. We've also got the brewer's wife coming up, Sam from Copper Beach. We've got, yes, Dave, of course, no hype or tripe this episode, but something very seasonal in its place.
Yes, so we are doing our becoming traditional beer and cheese feature for the festive season. We're both going to have 3 cheeses and 3 beers, I believe.
That's right. One of those 3 beers is another version of that Durham Stout we had in our last episode. We were so taken with it that we've got hold of the other 2 iterations of it, which was a Speyside version and a whiskey version.
Which is what you have. And
That's
I've
right.
got the Islay, yeah.
That's right. So we're going to have those. We're going to pair them up with something. And then 2 of the beers as well. So it's all going on this episode, and we'll kick it off as we usually do with Brew to Me, where we try beer from a brewery that we haven't sampled before. Dave? Well, I'm going to say, where are you going? You seem to go to Reading every time this time. Are you going to Reading?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. That's a good guess, isn't it?
Going to Reading. Now, actually, you have all of these beers here waiting for you as well, because Adam from Mysterious Brewing, who I had not heard of, and they are based in Little London in Reading. Adam very kindly sent 2 lots of 6 beers, so 12 beers. But what I thought we would do to make things slightly different for the end of the year, Dave, is I bought back in out of the garage 2 of their beers.
Ooh, okay.
And you can pick which one I would go for, because I knew which one I would normally go for.
This is so weird. We say this before.
Are you doing the same?
Yeah, but I'm doing it with a slight twist on that. I've got 6 for you to pick from.
Okay. Well, I could have gone all 6.
Yeah. I was just being a bit of a show-off, really. Right, so what have you got for me to pick that you're going to sample?
So you could go for, now what do you want? Do you want, what detail do you want to choose?
So are we talking light or dark here?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll give you a dark one.
Okay. In which case, then, I am having Black Light, which is a 5.5% black IPA.
Nice.
Oh.
Do you know, I noticed this recently when I go rooting around the fridge. I've got a few black IPAs in there. And it's one of those styles that you have it, put it in the fridge, and it just stays there for ages. It's never very appealing for some reason. But when you open it and you drink a black IPA, you think, oh, why haven't I done this before? This is really good.
I completely agree. It's never a style I'd buy. And then if I do get one, I'm the same as you. It will sit in the fridge and I'll think, maybe not. And then eventually I'll bite the bullet and have it one night and always be pleasantly surprised.
There's quite a few styles in beer that do that for me, and black IPA is one of them. But usually I think, why do I have these silly prejudices against certain types of beers? It's ridiculous.
Now, for full disclosure, it's fair to say, unfortunately, as there's so many coughs and colds and snivels going around at this time of year, I can't smell. I haven't got a very good sense of smell at all at the moment, so I can't comment upon what this black IPA smells of, if indeed it smells of anything, but I'm sure it does. But I still can taste, and it says it delivers a soft roasted finish backed with a hint of orange from the Amarillo. So the hops in it are Centennial and Cascade, which are going to make it sort of quite bitter. And the drier, yes. And then the Amarillo should add in the bitter fruit, interestingly. So let's see.
I know you've just said your sense of smell has failed you, but do you get anything there on the nose?
No, I don't at all. But I refuse to knock the brewery down because it could well smell of something. But I think my taste is probably a little bit affected. I can definitely taste the Centennial and the Cascade. And I think there is a hint of Amarillo. And I think it is a hint of orange. Now, it's the classic, I've read it. Does that mean I've told myself it tastes like that? But I think there is a little bit of orange just kicking around in the background. Goes down very nicely. It's very light. It's not very effervescent, which sometimes you get with those black IPAs. They get a bit roasty. And
if you didn't know what colour it was, would you know it was a black IPA?
I'd like to say yes.
Okay.
Because of how pales are these days when everything's very largely fruity. This isn't.
This is more malty than fruity.
Exactly. So I think, and even in the glass, it says black IPA, but the colour of it, reflecting off the light, it's a lovely ruby, really, I would say. I don't know if you can see. You probably can't.
Oh, no, you can see it. I see it. Yeah, looks nice.
Yeah.
So for anybody who's never had a black IPA, if somebody saw that in the glass, they'd think, oh, look, there's a stout. What's so different between that and a stout?
It's not as dry. Once you're getting into stouts at a similar type of strength for me, they usually go down the dry route where they're a little bit dry on the end and roasty, or there'll be something where they just say it's a standard stout and they won't put any adjuncts or anything in, and then you get something which is quite malty, can be quite smooth.
More body.
Yeah, that wouldn't have a huge amount of body compared to a stout for sure, or even some porters. If you were going to go for a comparison, it'd be closer to getting to a porter, I would say.
So I think we're saying thumbs up here.
Yeah, and obviously Adam from Mysterious can tell us a bit more about themselves.
I'm Adam from Mysterious Brewing, and thanks for having us on this week's podcast. We launched the brewery in May this year, so we're very much the new kids on the block. In fact, it was really interesting listening to Craig and Gareth from 3 Words Brewing on your last podcast, as we share so many similarities. My partner in brewing is Ken Barker, and together we both started out home brewing around 5 or 6 years ago. After joining our local homebrew club, Reading Amateur Brewers, an opportunity arose last year that would take us on the next step of our adventure and to start brewing on a commercial level. We currently produce up to 1,000 litres at a time and supply cask, keg and can across Berkshire and beyond. In fact, we have just started a regular delivery down to the south coast, and more recently we've had our first shipment go up to Manchester, and we've got a few more long distance orders coming in, which is really exciting for us. We both love to brew a wide range of beers, but we also know that for Mysterious to be successful, we have to make beers people want to enjoy and come back to. Therefore, our aim is to take classic styles and make modern classics. We sent you a couple of selection boxes that should give you an idea of what we do, including our Sitka ESB, which I guess is a good example of pushing our beers to make them interesting while still relying on a solid traditional base. Also in the pack that we sent through to you is Blacklight, and obviously coming from Reading, we really couldn't resist producing a black IPA. It's a style that both Ken and I really love to brew and to drink. We're really pleased with this one, with the soft coffee and chocolate combined with the aromatics from the hops. We think that it produces a really nice, well-balanced beer, and we hope that you enjoy it as well. I will just quickly mention that we've got a brand new beer launching this week. It's our first big collaboration with Disruption is Brewing, and it's an 8.5% West Coast double IPA. We're super excited by this one. So if you go over to our social media channels at Mysterious Brewing, you'll find out all the information on that one. Finally, if any of your listeners would like to sample our beers with a similar pack to the one that we sent over to you guys, and hey, it's Christmas just around the corner, so there's no better time to order a sample pack. We have a special offer for the listeners of this podcast. Simply head over to mysteriousbrewing.com, head to the shop, make your selection, and then simply add Daftaboutcraft at the checkout, and you'll get a very special discount to enjoy this December. So thanks again, and hopefully we can chat again next year, maybe when we have our first birthday.
Brilliant. Thanks very much to Adam there for the lowdown on Mysterious. It really is weird how you get these little pockets of places across the country that all of a sudden there's loads and loads of breweries there. We had Future State not long ago from Reading, and we've got Mysterious here, and there's various other small ones and growing craft breweries around the area as well. How's that drink developed then while you've been listening to Adam?
Possibly getting a little bit more Centennial and Cascade coming through. It's just starting to get a bit more bitter. That's not a bad thing. It's not changed my opinion of black IPAs. What we said at the top, it's not making me rush out to want to buy them. And if I did get some, it probably still wouldn't be like flying out of my fridge. That said, it's still very, very nice. So if it is something that you're listening to this and thinking, I quite like the sound of something that's, a bit roasty, but not all the way to a stout, and there's still a little bit of fruit. And you can get black IPAs which do a bit more on the hoppy side. This wouldn't be that hoppy. I'd say, absolutely explore them and have a go. It's a very well brewed beer. No complaints on that front. It's well done. The flavours are all present and correct. So it's a thumbs up from me. It's just, as we said at the top of this, it's not a style either of us really explore in great detail.
And I think fair dues to breweries who do styles like that, because it won't just be us who has that aversion to black IPAs and similar beers. A lot of people will. So for a brewery to bring out that, knowing those facts, fair play. And doing it well, fair play indeed. Right, well, I'm not going to tell you where I'm going. I'm going to show you the can, and I want you to see if you can guess where this brewery is. Now, I must say a massive thanks to my wife, Lisa, who drove over to Sturchley Wines in Birmingham yesterday specifically to get these beers. What was interesting, actually, when she was in there, she happened to mention the podcast to the guys in there, and they knew about us because somebody else had been in this week talking about Daftaboutcraft. I thought that was quite cool. Right.
Well, I mean, we'd probably quite happily have a chat to Sturchley.
This is what Lisa said to them. Would you be up for having a chat? Yes, absolutely. So would be really interesting because they're one of the sort of mainstays of the craft beer scene, aren't they, in terms of bottles?
Well, they've made it into being a collab with Daya and whatnot, haven't they? So it's...
Yeah, so absolutely, 2024, we'll have them on for a chat. But I noticed on their socials a few days ago that they said they'd got this new brewery in, they'd been watching them, and they'd got these cans in. So this is what we've got. They've got a range of 6, and I've got all 6.
Obviously.
Here's the design. Can you see what that is?
It's one of two things. It's either an amoeba.
It's not, I can see why you're saying that, but it's not.
Or it's the thing that's on a Paisley shirt.
Correct, Paisley. So we're going to Paisley.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
It's good, isn't it? And all these cans, they've all got a different coloured Paisley design on them.
Ooh, okay.
And when you put them next to each other, they look phenomenal. They look superb.
Yeah, they look mint.
We'll put a picture up on the socials for you to see. So I've got 6 different beers here. We've got a salted caramel stout, a chocolate orange stout.
That's the front runner, especially this time of year.
Yeah, a margarita sour.
That's what you'd have.
That's what I would really want you to say. You're obviously not going to let me have that. A New England Pale. And 2 more. An apricot sour, which I'd happily take right now. And the last of the 6 we've got is Paisley Pale Ale.
Which sounds like it'll be their core. Well, it's between the apricot sour, because the apricot is an interesting flavour, and the chocolate orange, because that's an interesting flavour. And I think I'd like to see what the chocolate orange is saying, because it is the time of year.
You're a bad man. Bad man. It's a difficult one to nail, the chocolate orange.
And it's a difficult one to nail, so exactly, I'm very interested. Does it say on the back what they've done with their orange? Because
there's different ways of dealing with the orange in beers, as we've learned before. Right, first of all, before I read what it says on the back of the can, I should tell you the brewery, because we still don't know. It is 2 Towns Down Brewery. And Sandy up there in Glasgow has been so busy, really, really busy. The business has been doing well. They've got a little tap room. His partner's just about to give birth as well. So it's all going on for him. But yeah, 2 Towns Down. They've been going since 2019. And like we said, the beer I've got is Chocolate Hills, a chocolate orange stout, 6.2%. And it says on the can, this Christmas beer, so you pick well because it is a Christmas beer, takes you to cosy nights by the fire with your favourite chocolate orange. Smooth and so moreish. Right, let's see. Let's pour this out. There is an orange hue to it. So we're a bit in the dark here as to how the they've got the orange into this.
Okay.
But let's see if we can tell from the way it tastes.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a nice surprise. That's nice. That's really good. Oh, that's really good. It tastes, like a dark chocolate orange.
Okay, so that's sort of the optimum, really. You don't want it that sickly, synthetic-y orange.
No, it's not that.
Or when they say it's chocolate orange, but it's actually just very chocolatey and no real orange.
This is, oh my goodness, this is like an actual Terry's chocolate orange.
Is it thick or is it thin?
Well, to look at it, it looks thin. But to taste it, it doesn't taste thin, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. It tastes like it's got a fair bit of body to it. And it's almost like, that chocolate is there and the orange is there. And it's a bit like the chocolate has gone a little bit soft and it started to melt and the orange flavours are really coming out of it. There's a massive thumbs up. I was a bit worried because we've had these sort of stouts on before.
It was a risky one to go for. And if it wasn't this time of year, I'd have probably gone for that sour, but I thought, well, no, especially as now at the time of recording and time of release, people might in the Sturchley area be able to still get tins of this.
Absolutely. Well, look, if you're in the area, anywhere near Sturchley Wines on the outskirts of Birmingham, you've got to get a can of this because this is awesome. If you like chocolate orange, my goodness. I've got some chocolate orange in the cupboard downstairs. Mind you, if I'd brought some up, that might have been a bit chocolate overload, hadn't it?
It can kill it, can't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, we're going to do some food and some beer later on, but I find sometimes you put food with something and then you come back to the beer and it's completely ruined the profile of it on your palate and it knackers it. So.
As we'll find out, you almost want something to contrast with the beer rather than too much of the same thing. The good news is that I'm actually heading to Scotland in the new year, Dave.
Oh, are you?
And they've got a little tap room, so maybe I can pay a visit. Yeah, we're going to Edinburgh, actually, not Glasgow, but just for 3 days over a weekend.
And are you going to make it to Glasgow as well?
Maybe now, yeah. Well, I hadn't planned to, but I mean, it's not too far, is it? Maybe
it's not too bad. It's not too bad, but yeah.
It's interesting because Sandy there from Two Towns Down, while he was a student, he worked at the Hanging Bat in Edinburgh. Mm. And I never got to the Hanging Bat last time we were there, so definitely going to go there. It's like Edinburgh's original craft bar, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We didn't make it when we went to Edinburgh on honeymoon, but I'd like to go back. And if I was doing Scotland again, I think Katie would probably agree, we'd go back and do the sort of Inverary area where we were, which is right near Fine Ales, and go see them again.
Yeah, nice.
That was their tap room is lovely. It's one of the nicest ones I've been to, yeah,
it's such a lovely place, isn't it? Well, I think we're staying near Leith, and we know what a hotbed Leith is these days for craft, so hopefully be plenty of stories to tell you. Well, on the next episode, actually. But yeah, look, that's a massive thumbs up from me for 2 Towns. That beer is amazing. If the others come near that, it's going to be a very nice Christmas. That's great. And your beer as well from Mysterious.
More than happy. Very interested to see what else they're going to provide with what they've given us. There's a Citra Pale, which was ironically going to be the other beer. There's a session beer, but it's limited edition. But there's some interesting stuff anyway, so watch this space.
Hello, Dave. I know you Daftaboutcraft has. It's Andy from hopsathome.co.uk. That's my best Santa impression. I have a beard. It's not white. I try my best for you. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely Christmas, wherever you are, wherever you spend it. Happy, healthy and boozy. 3 key elements. Anyone that will be ordering in our courier range, so the rest of the UK, really need to get your order in by tea time on Tuesday, which is the 19th. In DHL, I'm guaranteeing that anything that goes out on the Wednesday, which is the 20th, will get there in time for Christmas. Anything after that, they can't guarantee it. So, a little bit important thing there. As always, if you haven't ordered before, you can use code HOPS10 to get you 10% off your first order. There's loads and loads of beer on there at the moment. I mean, they're only adding one this week because we had absolute stacks last week. So we had Verdant, Cloudwater, Bang the Elephant, some Wylam, some Vault City, all sorts of stuff went on last week. And the only one we're adding this week actually is Wylam Imperial Macchiato, which is their double version of Macchiato, which is a hazelnut coffee praline porter, I believe. Anyway, 10%, absolute whopper, and they only brew it, I think, once every couple of years as well, so worth getting hold of. Anyway, you know where I am, you know where we are, hopsathome.co.uk, at Hops at Home on socials. Like I said, have a lovely, lovely Christmas, everybody, and I'll see you in 2024. Cheers.
So we found more and more on Daftaboutcraft that what Dave and myself like to do is find breweries you might not have heard of and try to spread the word about those breweries. And we've got another one we've come across recently. In fact, it was back in May we first came across Trig Brewery from York. And delighted to say Patrick from Trig is joining us now. How are you doing, Patrick?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, we're good. We've got a couple of beers that you were kind enough to send down to us, so we're looking forward to those. But most exciting of all is that you're up and running now, and you're canning, and you've got a web shop coming. It's all happening for you after a big build-up and lots of work behind the scenes.
We kind of got going in May, June, and started doing all the process and building a glorified shed called the Outbuilding at the moment. We're on a 150 litre kit, and we got all the approvals through in middle of August, end of August, and launched mid-September with our first beer. So we've just been trying to build up from there and get our beers out into the world. But
your story goes back much further than that, because you've been interested in around beer for another 10 years on top of all of that.
So I've always been interested in beers. I grew up in West Yorkshire, right in the hills, the Pennines, and I kind of grew up around real ale, I guess. When I was 16, 17, I was working in a pub restaurant where we had some really good real ale on, and then I moved up to Newcastle and found myself managing bars, which happened to be craft beer bars. Early on in the craft beer craze in the UK, kind of 2012 to 2015. So before a lot of the big names out there now, and it's always been a pipe dream, I guess, and talked about it for a long time, and kind of got to this year, and we need to actually do something about it, or stop talking about it and put it to bed. So we decided to do something about it. We're here now.
And was it just a case of, you say it's been 10 years really since you first were around the scene. Scene's changed a lot, and it's arguably probably harder now to get going, yet that didn't sort of put you off, that you still really wanted to give it a go.
Yeah. Of all the time, we've probably picked the worst time in the industry to decide to start, but circumstances have led us to this, and it kind of the right time for myself. I left managing bars and pursued I'm an engineer by trade, if you like. So I'm a design engineer and work on creating new products. And I kind of followed that for a bit, and for about 10 years now, and had that in the background that I've always wanted to do something for myself and build something. And kind of it was the time to do it now. So
yeah, if you can make it work now, you can make it work anytime.
Yeah.
So you're still doing the day job as well then?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're only a one barrel kit at the moment, so we're definitely not producing enough for me to not be working full time.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the obvious question, but do you want to get to that point where you can give up your job, or do you just not want to go down that route? It's a tough decision that you probably will have to make at some point.
I'd like to, yes, but I think that's quite a way off yet. We need to kind of build ourselves. I don't want to jump the gun and put ourselves in a financially difficult situation. That's why we started at this side. We had lots of discussions around how to start and the best ways into the market, and we decided this was probably a lower risk way into it. And if it didn't go right, if there wasn't an appetite for our beers and it wasn't a viable option, we weren't too far into it that we couldn't kind of not back out of it, but we were putting ourselves in a situation we weren't comfortable in.
If you're not careful, you get to that point where you've invested so much time and money, you just don't want to stop.
Yeah, you're chasing a loss leader at some point, potentially, and we definitely don't want that. And at the moment, if you were to go to a bank now and ask them for some money to set up a brewery without any experience as running a brewery, it's going to be a difficult ask.
You've said yourself, you've got one barrel kit at the moment. Is the canning line yours?
We're just using a 2-head filler and a manual seamer. A lot of people our size have started to get into that. It's become more affordable in the last couple of years to be able to actually get a good product out of the system like that, with purging CO2 and filling and seaming. So hopefully the really hoppy beers kind of survive it and aren't getting full of oxygen like you would if you're trying to bottle.
Yeah, so you've got the beers in front of you that you sent to us. I've just opened. Yeah. I was going to just open the dark one you sent, the milk stout, but I'm going to open both of them, I've decided. So I've opened the pale first. Have you opened yours as well, Dave?
I have.
Now, first thing...
I open mine as well.
Yeah, you open... Yeah, actually, yeah, go for it. First thing we should say, I've got high hopes because When the package arrived in the post, the first thing that struck me was these guys mean business. The artwork is beautiful. It's cleverly done. It's really impactful. And you put there was a nice postcard in the box as well with a handwritten note. I love all that sort of stuff. And those little things, those attention to details, if they carry on through to the beer, I think I'm expecting something quite good here.
The other thing as well is, obviously, we're doing this sadly on an audio medium, but Patrick's got a sweatshirt which I already want, which has got the Trig logo on it. I was going to say, while we're talking about this, you have to tell us about why you're Trig Brewing. What's the thinking behind the name?
We spend a lot of time outdoors in the hills hiking, so we decided to base it around trig points. For people who don't know, they were used originally for mapping the country, and hills have trig points on the top of them, like the highest peaks in the area, so they could use them for triangulation to work out the lay of the land from there. So trig points or trig bagging is kind of a thing that quite a few people do, and that's trying to get as many trigs as they can. So we decided to work with that. We like being out. We got a van. We spend a lot of time in the lakes and in the moors and dales. We're quite well located in York for the locality of getting into the countryside. So,
ironic thing is, if the brewery really takes off and it goes places, you won't have time to do any of that.
No, I don't have a lot of time for it this year since we decided to go for it. Doing my 40 odd hours a week at my normal job, and then however many hours I end up in the brewery, it soon tots up and don't have a lot of time for anything else.
So you've told us where the name comes from. Now, tell us about this beer that we're drinking. So this is called Brocken Spectre, and it's a 4.5% hazy pale.
Yeah, so this is kind of our headline hazy beer, if you like, a headline pale ale. 4.5% with nice, easy drinking. It's kind of the beers I like to drink, and we've seen in the last few years that percentages seem to be coming back down again from where they were in 2020, that people are kind of getting back to wanting to drink a few beers of probably a lower ABV than necessarily just sitting at home drinking 8% double IPAs, which was great at the time. There was nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So it was good, but we based it on 4.5%, nice, easy session pale ale kind of strength, but then we've filled it with Azaka, Eldorado, and Citra. Quite a lot in the Whirlpool, a fair amount in a dry hop, but nothing too big, so that it wasn't overpowering and kind of had enough body and flavour to be really enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a bit of a beer of two halves for me, but I can tell you've got the oats in there, which you say about on the to add the body, and it's quite a sweet nose. But then the taste itself, I get quite a lot of the sort of Eldorado coming through to make it a bit more bitter. And
yeah, you don't want something too soft and juicy. Well, you do, but you also don't. Getting the balance right, isn't it? For 4.5, you could quite easily overpower it with hops, I think, without like a big body behind it. We've tried to do that with quite a bit of oats and wheat in there to kind of give you that thickness to carry the hop, than it being too thin in the mouth that I find some could be.
yeah, that's always been a big bugbear of mine, that it's less so now, I think, because brewers seem to have caught up. But certainly the first sort of wave of session IPAs were just hit of hops on the nose. First taste was a bit hoppy, and then it was just water come the back end. Yeah. Don't know about you, Dave. I'd say it's got quite a big body for a 4.5%. Yeah. Not an overpowering body, but
definitely. And I get that bitterness you were talking about. Not harsh bitterness in any way. It's quite nice. It, like you say, makes you go back, and it's very, very drinkable. I love it when we find a brewery we haven't had a beer from, and it's really good straight away. It's ticking all the boxes now. That's really good.
So we're sending stuff out, and we arrange this, and it's like, what if they don't like it? I'm still at that point at the brewery where every time it's, well, what if it's not good or they don't like it? I need to kind of get over that bit and believe it'll be all right.
Yeah, I think having self-belief in what you're making is a big thing when you're just starting out. It's very easy to think, oh, look at all these great big breweries here, how can we ever compete with them? But one, you don't have to compete with them, and two, your beer, judging from that, is very good anyway. So you certainly have nothing to worry about. But there's a beer for everybody. If we hadn't liked it, the next person might. Do you look at Untapped or not, or have you tried to just stay away from it?
I never used it personally before the brewery. I've known about it, been around it kind of thing, but it's not something I've really done myself. But since we've had the brewery, I find myself looking at it probably too often.
Yeah.
It's so subjective and totally depends on the person, and you kind of sometimes get reviews where you don't think it's a great rating, but then they're really positive about it in the comment, and their averages are kind of what they're scoring things at are kind of averaging quite low anyway. So it's a good beer for them, but it's not.
Their average is pretty low anyway.
How do you rate things? And how do you rate a huge imperial stout versus a really good quality lager. They're so different, and if people are scaling them on the same scale, it's a really difficult thing to get.
Some people, you give them an Imperial Stout and straight away it's 4.5 out of 5 plus because it's a big, fat Imperial Stout.
Yeah, because it's boozy. Yeah,
give
boozy
them
and sweet and things like that.
Give them a 2.8% session and they're like, oh, what's this? But you've got to judge each beer on its merits, haven't you? Not just on one criteria. But for me, there's a lot of strange things happening on Untappd. A lot of people should just get a different hobby because beer drinking is not for them because they seem to hate the stuff. It's bizarre.
Yeah, but it's like all these things. We'll look at it, we'll take it into consideration, but I'm not too driven by it, hopefully.
I've seen sort of some brewers get upset when they're rated low, a beer that they really like gets a bad rating and just forget about it and move on. Somebody will like it somewhere.
Yeah. I've just got to get over that bit, I think.
Yeah, it won't take long. It won't take long.
As an engineer, I'm very quality and like process driven. So it might not be the beer that's wrong, but if there's something I've done quality wise, but
we find time and time again people who are driven, who are from engineering or scientific backgrounds, everything where it's process, and they generally deliver the best results because the attention to detail is the top thing, and consistency as well, and quality control. Obviously, not been going very long, but a quick peruse of the website would lead you to think otherwise. There's no shortage of different types of beers available or that have been brewed in the past.
Yeah, so we've got a core range of 4 beers. The Brock Inspector is one of them. We've got False Summit, which is an American IPA, 5.5%, kind of biscuity, piney, got a bit of citrus in there. But Interloper, which is an oatmeal porter, mostly on cask. We're going to do some in keg as well because we've had that asked for a couple of times. 5%. We really like it. It seems to be going down really well with people who've tried it. And then we've got Bad Connection, which is our 3.8% hoppy blonde ale, which is just kind of quite a traditional malt base. Then we've got Azaka, Centennial and Cascade, and the hops on that with a low to medium dry hop to give it a bit of lift.
Would it be fair to say with those beers and the styles that you're sort of covering all the bases for a quite local market?
Yeah, I'd say so. Being in York, we've got a really good scene around here. Kind of that Bad Connection is based off an idea of that.
It sounds like a cask beer, like concept.
Yeah, it is, and it was all based around the idea of one of those beers you have when you've been out hiking in the hills and you just get to a really nice country pub and you just want a pint of cask ale, whether it's by the fire in winter or in the pub garden on a really hot summer's day. You can just sit and drink and have a really good time with it.
I can picture that one already, and it comes out on the hand pull and bright yellow colour, I'm guessing, and then it takes a little while to settle down. That's the kind of beer I'm picturing.
Yeah, as you say, we've got a few others, and we're doing kind of integrating some one-offs or seasonal beers in there. So we've done 6 of those now. So we're kind of doing 1 or 2 of our core range and then throwing in a one-off every time. So we've had a peach sour that's gone down really well. We're going to be redoing that probably January, February time, maybe change the fruits up in that as well. We've got a cask oatmeal pale ale at the moment that's got Simcoe and Nectaron in it with a bit more of a dry hop. Got another hazy pale that's called How, which is similar to the Brock Inspector, but 5%, kind of same body, same malt bill in it, pumped up a bit. And then it's got Amarillo, Mosaic, Nectaron in it as well. It's a bit more stone fruits, and that pine from the Mosaic sappiness is coming through, which is nice.
So because your kit is relatively small, as we've spoken about, and you've got the 4 core beers, I'm guessing your biggest problem is getting the beer brewed quickly enough to get onto your next beer.
Yeah, we're in quite a good situation at the moment. We're selling it. It's all going very quickly. So we're just turning over the fermenters as quickly as we can, kind of getting stuff racked out of it and filling it sometimes the same day as, we're racking out of it as we're getting the brew on for the next one. So we've got three sets of fermenters, so we're turning them over as quickly as we can, but we're doing all we can at the moment, but we kind of need a bit more.
Are you in the situation where when your beer's ready, a lot of it is already sold?
Yes, and some of them.
Nice.
People are asking for it.
That's great.
So it's a scary position because it's what do you do next? And we've not been going that long.
Obviously, you've mentioned a lot of the beers there, which all sound very interesting. I certainly want to get my hands on a few of them. When are you hoping to have the web shop up and running?
As we speak, it'll be the middle of next week, all being well, if everything comes through. We've got the website built. and it's just sat waiting to go live as soon as we get the nod from the council that we've got our license to sell.
That's exciting, though, isn't it? All of a sudden, you're open up to everybody. So
it is.
So will you?
Got to get some cans ready now.
Well, yeah, that's yeah. For every bit of progress you make, there's more hard work along the way. So will you deliver nationally then?
Yes, we're going to deliver nationally. We kind of are looking in York with home deliveries for beer, because we've got Trembling Madness, which is, I know they do national as well, but nice to get in there. But for us locals, they do same day deliveries. If you order it before 4 o'clock, it turns up that evening on your doorstep.
That'd be lethal if I lived in York.
Yeah. It is, especially in this time of year when you don't want to go anywhere to go get it. So we're going to do local delivery so that we can kind of do that.
Excellent. So you've got your beers sorted. They're good. We've found that out with the Hazy Pale. I've just opened up your 7.5% milk stout, so we'll report back on that in a minute. You've got the web shop sorted. What else do you want to achieve in the next sort of 12 months, 2 years?
Well, grow the name, I guess, grow our customer base and hopefully gain a reputation for our beers being good quality, and grow our production capabilities, hopefully be able to get more beer out there to people. We're still early on, so hopefully just a kind of a steady growth.
So what you're basically looking at is organic growth. I mean, we talk to a lot of people, and the ones who seem to do best are those who grow organically. They don't do anything too quickly.
Yeah, it's getting that balance right for us now. As we said before, and you just said, you don't want to grow too quickly, but also we need to, if I'm going to grow it, we need to get to a position where I can do it properly.
As on a tap room, probably not in the next 12 months, but if things were going really well, that seems to be the thing that you get to eventually. I
think if we were to get an industrial unit in the future, so with a bigger kit in it, which would be the next steps for us, because other than getting another maybe 1 or 2 fermenters into the space we've got, we're not going to have space to produce and stock and store. So it would be going to a bigger kit, which would mean a bigger site, or a site, which then comes with its own responsibilities and everything that comes with it. But we'd definitely be looking to have a space that we could host people in and sell our beer directly. And the idea would be to have a nice community-based space where people can come and drink. Yeah, it's just problem is York is finding that kind of space. York's a funny place for industrial sites. In the city centre, there's not many. There's a really good one, and that's what Brew York's in. Yeah, it would be finding the right space. It's going to be the challenging bit for us. Right space at the right price in the right location.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that renting units around the York area is a particularly cheap thing to do either.
Where some of those units are, they're on industrial estates on the outskirts of the city where it's not easy to get to, so there'll be not that much point putting a tap room there, because it be a travel out for people, whereas I'd like to have somewhere closer in where we can get footfall in and people can walk out to it or to it from wherever. And again, very challenging in York, because unlike Manchester's and Newcastle's, York didn't grow in the Industrial Revolution, so we don't have massive warehouses and things like that people are looking to fill and fit kit through the door of the spaces. But then you look at them and you're like, well, you're never going to get a fermenter through that space. So.
People never think of that sort of thing, do they, with units? I mean, people out there who drink the beer, they never think, how can you get that in there? But these are all things you've got to think about, aren't they?
It's getting everything in and out, doing it throughout the day.
One thing we didn't say, is it just you who's running Trig, or is other people involved as well?
Yeah, it's mainly me. My father helps me with bits. He's one of the directors as well. When we set it up, he helps me out around the brewery.
You need that help, don't you? It's hard otherwise. If you're doing everything on your own, that's a tough gig.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good to have someone who can bounce the idea off, and just even if it's not necessarily the answer that comes from it, it's saying it aloud that do things. And as I mentioned before, being an engineer, I'm really like to drive efficiencies. So it's trying to get the brewery as efficient as I can, especially at the size I can. Because if I can be more efficient in my production, and even if it's another 6 cans out of a batch,
it's all money, isn't it? It's all cans.
As I say, we're using in the Brock and Spectre, we use cryo-based hops, so we can get more out of it, because it's, especially on the dry hop, we're not losing as much to the dry hop, so we can get a bit more out of it, use a bit less. So instead of using it like some people would use it so they can use the same amount but get more flavour out of it, we've kind of dialed it back and portioned it back.
Yeah, and when you are so small, every saving really counts as well, doesn't it? Right, well, I said I'd open the stouts. I've now drunk some of the stout. I love a milk stout. It's really good. That roastiness, but not an overwhelming roastiness. Sometimes all you get is that sort of coffee and it's too much. But you sort of get a hit of that, and then this sweetness comes in as well. But not that overpowering, cloying sweetness. It's a really nice, subtle one. It's again, like a beer of two halves.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. We trialed this batch a couple of times on really small kits over the year or two, doing different flavoured ones, and this one's always worked really well. And 7.5%, it's strong enough, and you can put a nice amount of sweetness in it without it being too big, too sweet, with that kind of artificial adjunct flavour that sometimes you might find.
Find that a lot, don't we, Dave?
We do. I was just thinking it's an unusually high percentage, even though you say it's strong enough for a milk stout.
For a milk stout,
I don't think of them coming in at 7.5. They're more in the somewhere 3 to 5 bracket for most of the time, I find.
Yeah, we've got the lactose in there, helps with that body as well, and that kind of sweet creaminess. We've used coffee from our friend in Newcastle who's just set up a small roastery as well. So we've put his coffee into it, and it's really good coffee to drink normally. And it's worked really nicely in this. He's done us a bit more of a robust roast on one of his regular ones, and to come out really nice. I'm really happy with it.
Strikes me as a beer that would be great over Christmas, sort of when you've sat down in front of the telly on, Boxing Day night or something, and you can just pour one of these out and sip on it slowly. Go down a right treat,
yes,
that would.
That was the aim for it. This is kind of our, if you like, Christmas special, if you like.
Superb.
We've got the metallic label on the cans and black and gold can for it. We thought it just looked a bit more special for this time of year.
So you just mentioned your cans again there. This one follows the same theme as the other one, but different colours. It really stands out. Have you got a designer, or don't tell me you're doing these yourself?
I'm doing these myself as well.
No, really?
So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, look, I think that our listeners need to get hold of some cans of Trig so they can see this artwork for themselves. And now the shop is live. Do you want to give the address out for people to go to and your social details as well?
Yeah, so it's just trigbrewery.com, and our socials is probably the best one. It's Instagram, where we post most of our stuff and new releases, and that's just at Trig Brewery, and that's where we're at.
Well, all I can say is if the rest of your beers are as good as these two, the future's good. Future's bright. What do you reckon, Dave?
Absolutely. I haven't tried the milk stout yet. I'm going to save that for another night, but I can't speak highly enough of the Brock and Spectre. I really enjoyed that. I will remember that pale, which is something that says a lot, because a hazy pale is, you can't move but for tripping over one. So to actually find one that you'll remember is credit. So no, very enjoyable, and really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen for you in the next 12 months or so.
No, that's fantastic. Appreciate it, and glad you enjoyed them.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Right, this is a time of the podcast where we look at our Untapped ratings and see which beers we've been enjoying since we last spoke to you, or which beers we haven't been enjoying on this occasion. Dave, what have you been enjoying? You have been enjoying something, haven't you?
I was going to say your side sounds very ominous. I could, as we are in the midst of the annual advent calendar, which my wife lovingly puts together this year with a lot of help from yourself, actually.
Yeah, you've got some really good beers in there.
Well, at the time of recording, I'm about just over halfway through, and I concur, because I haven't really had a Duff one. And we've used some old friends in terms of, I sort of suggested this year to Katie, rather than her trying to find loads of different beers, I said, go for these breweries because I know they're good and we like them, and I'll get quality beers. And so far, haven't been disappointed. We've had Bayonet have been in there, and Three Blind Mice, and Ridgeside. Phantom haven't actually made it on yet. Hopefully we can change that in 2024, but their beers have made a huge leap for me. I've had a lot of their beers in the calendar so far, it feels like, and everything's been good. But one of their beers is not my tried and tested. My tried and tested instead, it comes from the Colonel. And it is their dry stout Galaxy version.
Oh, I did wonder if it would be one of the stouts.
It's actually no longer in production. No longer in production, apparently. Although if you look at the check-ins on Untapped, it does show that it's still obviously been kegged and people have got kegs now.
Yeah. I think I had this not so long ago, and I noticed when I checked it in, it said no longer in production. So it is still out there. You can get it. They're just not making it.
And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's so good. You get the Galaxy, you get the dryness of stout. What tipped this over the edge was not just the fact it was a Colonel beer, not just the fact it was on keg and it was very nice. It was where I got to try it, and that was at the Swan at Stratford St Mary, who have just reopened their doors. Now, they would be 20-minute car ride away.
Now, first of all here, you're always saying how rubbish it is in your area for somewhere to go for a nice drink. Now you've got somewhere.
Well, yeah, this has slowly been improving. You know, the Arcade Tavern, who frequently get mentioned, are consistently now you can walk in there and you'll be able to get a good craft beer. That's fine. And there's a couple of other places in Ipswich that are doing that now. But this is out in a village where if you wanted to go rambling all day, you'd then come to this place, which is quite an unassuming pub, or it was. They have put a massive extension on, and I do mean massive, but a very, because it's on a list, it's on a building which did require permissions. It is listed, and what they've done is incredible. I'd urge anyone to have a look at their website and have a look at their socials and see what they've done. And if you wanted to come down to this part of the world and sort of make a visit of it, it's well worth it. They're going to be brewing in there. There's going to be a tap. Sorry, not tap. There's going to be a brew kit going in, but it's just an incredible place now. And we're talking, I think it was 16 to 18 lines. You've got probably a few hand pulls, but also a load of keg, a lot of European, Belgian, and also some craft. And this was part of the craft offering, and it was just brilliant.
It's like an early Christmas present for you.
Yes, 100%.
Sounds awesome. Well, I've just looked through my Untapped and I've had some nice beers. Best beers I've actually had were probably from our pals at Copper Beach, but it feels a bit wrong to give them tried and tested because we have them on the podcast. And so I'm going to tell you about something I did the other day. We went out to a pub and I had a flight of beers, and they were all New England IPAs. And Lisa got them for me. I didn't know what they were. So she said, here's 4 New Englands, work your way through these, see what you think. I liked maybe one of the 4. 3 of them were Verdants, the other one was a Play Brew. And it just got me thinking.
I will say that the deck was a bit loaded against you there, because they would be 2 breweries that the Verdant side of things, we've done that to death on Highfield Tripe, and if you like it, you like it. Yeah. If you don't, you don't. Play Brew,
well,
I find them very sweet.
In actual fact, the Play Brew one was probably my favourite one. I just thought that the 3 Verdant New Englands were distinctly average.
Did they all seem very similar and all have a very similar nose?
They all smelt like I was
Verdant.
Drinking cabbage water.
Yep.
One of them had got nectar on in it, which I know is a fantastic hop. Is so fruity and full of flavour. It just tastes.
Starred in tried and tested this on the last episode.
It did, and I've had a lot of nectar on beers recently. Love the hop. Couldn't even taste the hop. All I could taste was this greenness, this vegginess, and I just think that this is not me having a go at Verdant. Not at all. I'm just telling you what I thought. And
we could put plenty of other breweries on and have 3 of theirs, and you might struggle. Some of the bigger guys that are putting out a lot of beers, you could blind taste, and it might be difficult.
It just struck me that you've got breweries like this who have these massive reputations, and in January or whenever it is, we'll see all the hype, or later in the year with Putty again and all that. Not going to get involved in that. Don't care. And I just think there's so many much better breweries out there who don't have the same profile. And that's who I want to support.
I can't disagree with that. I think this is what we've sort of organically found with how the podcast is heading, that, there is always a place for a Verdant beer or other beer brewers of similar stature within the scene. There is always a place for those beers, because without them, you don't get to champion the little guys. So it's not just slamming the bigger ones who've made it big and saying, you used to be cool. Like, there is still very much a place for their beers, but I think there's a fair argument to say that they now go for a different market where probably a lot of the beers taste the same, because they know they're getting to a bigger audience, whereas the smaller guys are thinking, right, how can we get you in the door and actually want you to taste our beer, and we're really going to put a lot more effort in.
That's the thing. I think the little guys, and we know a lot of these smaller breweries now, it's their life work. They want to put their passion into every beer, and you can taste that. and all I could taste was cabbage and onions. And I don't want that. I don't want that.
Daftaboutcraft.
You're listening to the Daftaboutcraft podcast with me, Dave D and Dave B. We're now joined by Sam, who is one half of the Copper Beech Brewing Company in Kidderminster, also known as the Brewer's Wife.
Hello, I'm here.
Thanks for joining us again. Now, this is a slightly different one because you usually come on here and tell us things from your perspective, being married to a brewer and as being part of a brewery. Now, I've got a story for you this time that you don't know.
Yeah, this is like the opposite of last month where you didn't know what was going to come out of my mouth. I have no idea what we're going to listen to today.
Right, well, so listeners may know that I help out sometimes with Dan and Sam, and I help at some of the events they do, and I serve beer to people and sell beer to people, this sort of stuff. Now, a few weeks ago, we were at the Three Counties Showground in Malvern in Worcestershire. It was a Sunday morning. And
what was the event?
It was the
the autumn show.
The autumn show, yeah. So not long ago.
No.
And I had to set up the Copper Beech stand one morning. I'd got a lot of cans to transport quite a long way, and they were quite heavy.
So they're in like these stackable plastic crates,
like
yeah.
the sort you get in supermarkets.
Yeah.
Now, you do know this bit of the story.
I do know this bit. That's why I was like, I've heard this.
This will lead on to another bit of the story, which you don't know about.
Fair enough.
So Sunday morning, a bit tired, and I thought, oh God, I can't possibly carry all these crates one by one by one. About half a mile each way. I'm going to find a solution and do the whole lot in one go. So I piled these.
Are you the kind of person that when you go shopping,
oh yes,
you have to bring all your bags in one go? You can't leave some in the boot.
Oh yeah, there's only one trip. Anything else is just...
Do you know, this is so me. I totally understand it. I used to live in a flat when me and Dan used to live in a flat, and I tell you what, if I couldn't get all those bags up in one go,
exactly,
they would stay in the car till Dan got home.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. No, there's no point. There's no point doing more than one journey if you can do it in one journey.
Except you couldn't do it in one journey, could you, Dave?
No, it didn't quite work out like that. So I've got this little trolley which we use for delivering kegs. You can get a couple of kegs on. So I started stacking up the trays of cans on the trolley. 1, 2, 3. Thought, no, I'll get them all on. 7 cans, 7 trays. How many cans in each tray?
Oh, now you're asking. I've no idea. A few.
40 or something?
I think more than that, even.
50. So probably I've got the best part of 300 cans.
Probably all our stock for that month.
On this trolley in front of me. I thought, it's a bit precarious. It's a little bit heavy, but if I can just get it into a good position and get a bit of momentum, I should be okay. So off I go, pulling this trolley along with all these cans on. And then there was a little bump in the gravel, the sort of gravel driveway. And the whole trolley sort of teetered a little bit and shook a little bit. Then the whole lot fell on the floor, right next to the security guy who just sort of stood there staring at me. So now we've got 300 cans on the floor. I'm not sure Dan realised the extent of this when I told him.
I think you played it down. The first time I heard this story, I don't think it was 300 cans.
No. Sorry, Dan.
This is how he finds out. Well, I think he's found out from all the dented, muddy stock he's found since.
Honestly, we had to take these cans. So in the end, I had to pick them all up and put them back in the trolley and then take them one by one to the store. So I had to. In the end, I ended up doing far more journeys than I would have done
if you'd have just done 2 at a time.
But what we also had by this point was an absolute ton load of dirty cans and dented cans and a few burst cans. Anyway, so this was on a Sunday morning. So that's
do you know what the worst thing is? We can't even dock your wages because we don't pay you a penny.
I know, yeah. Just had to have less free beer on that occasion.
Yeah. No, you got more. You got all the burst dented cans.
That's true, actually, yeah.
The plot thickens. It all comes together now.
So, yeah, I was doing it on purpose to get free beer. So that's a pretty annoying way to start a Sunday morning. But it got worse towards the end of the day because...
So this is the bit I haven't heard.
This is the bit you haven't heard.
Okay.
So the event ended on the Sunday night. Me and Dan had to pack everything up, get it all on the truck. So there was a mobile bar, as you know. There's the cans, there's tables, there's all sorts. So
that truck looks big, but when you put all of that stuff on, it's like Jenga, isn't it?
Yes.
You can't find room.
Exactly. Oh, kegs, loads of kegs as well, half a dozen kegs. And so the back of it's full, the cab's full, it's all piled up on top. Anyway, so we get it all on, no problem. Away we go. Now, my car, we'd left my car somewhere else for some reason. I can't remember why. So we had to go and pick up my car. It was in Worcester. So I said to Danny, is it okay to go and get my car? Oh, yeah, no problem. So we get into Worcester, and my car's on this little car park. So I could see it. It was there, no problem. So Dan drives me over to my car so I could get out. And I was going to drive my car back to the brewery then to help him unload. But as he pulled into the car park, there was a very loud crunching noise. And you know, a lot of car parks have height restriction bars across the top.
Yeah.
There was one of those.
Oh, God. What did he put on the roof?
Well, the bar. There was this like horrendous crunching sound. Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
So we sort of stopped and got out and had a look, and it was still there, but there was like bits of wood hanging off and stuff.
Oh, God. Have you broke this to John yet? Because didn't John help build the bar?
Well, I think he had to rebuild some of the bar.
Oh, no.
So anyway, is it okay? So Dan gets out and has a look. Oh, Dan playing it down. Yeah, I think it's okay.
Is this the bar or the car park?
Oh, well, we didn't really pay much attention to the barrier at the car park. We were more concerned about the bar. And some of the taps looked a little bit like they'd been knocked out of place, but it wasn't too bad. And Dan sort of rearranged things a little bit. I went and got in my car to follow him back to the brewery. And then it happened again on the way out.
How? Well,
but this time there was taps going flying everywhere.
Oh, my God. So it was worse the second time.
It was worse the second time, yeah.
But, so he obviously got fully into the car park the first time, yeah. So, why would he not think, oh, I've got to go out the same way?
Well, he did, and he made some adjustments, but it was just the adjustments weren't quite right. In fact, he seemed to have adjusted them so there was more of a collision on the way out, to be honest.
So...
Because it was this almighty crunching, but this time, of course, because I was driving behind him, I could see it all happening in slow motion. And there's a tap flying here and a tap flying there, and I can see the bar getting wedged underneath the height restriction barrier. Oh my goodness. You'd have been horrified.
I would have been. I'm horrified now, so I absolutely would have been horrified at the time.
Oh, and when we got back to the brewery and unloaded all of this, the impact of hitting this barrier had dented the roof of the van as well.
No.
If you look carefully.
How has he not told me any of this?
I think if you look, well, why do you think? If you look carefully, I think you may just see.
Which I will be later now. I'll be looking out the bedroom window at the top of that van.
Good story. You like that one?
Well, no, not particularly. It's not the best one I've ever heard. I mean, obviously the bar must be fixed. I'm pretty sure we've used it since.
Yeah, the bar. I think the bar is better for it now, to be honest.
It's just a few improvements made.
I think,
thanks to being completely obliterated.
Yeah, I don't know what because your dad John fixed the bar subsequently. I think I don't know what Dan told him. I don't know how he told him it got damaged.
My dad, if you think my reaction to something like that would be bad. I mean, I love how he's got you to tell me in this forum because he's not had to tell me himself. No. But my dad's reaction would have been about 50 times more extreme.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like he would have hit the roof. He would have hit that barrier.
I couldn't believe it though. It was just the worst bit for me was driving behind and just seeing it in slow. I knew it was going to happen, but I couldn't. It's not like I could jump out of my car and go and tell him. I could just see him approaching it. I thought, oh my goodness, it's going to happen again.
Oh no!
Sure enough,
is this giving you a little bit of an insight of like what it's like to live with Dan?
Well, yeah. I mean, you come on here and give these insights. Now I can give these insights as well. But you have this
24/7.
all
yeah,
day,
I have to live with
day.
this. Yeah. So be thankful for that.
Anyway, so that's my story. We look forward to your next story next time. Dave, have you got your cheese?
Affirmative. Have you got your beer?
I've got 1, 2, 3 beers and 1, 2, 3 cheeses as well.
Just as good, just as well. I've got the same then.
Now we know it's really nearly Christmas when we've got the cheese and the beer out.
Yeah, I wish I could smell. Apart from that, I still can't smell.
Yeah, that's a slight. Well, not really a problem. At least you can taste. You haven't got
I can definitely taste it. We worked that out anyway, but I can definitely taste. So.
I'm not going to ask you what your cheeses are or what your beers are. We'll reveal as we go along. For those of you who haven't heard this before, what we do at this time of year, it's become a tradition. It started off as a one-off and we enjoyed it so much that we've just carried on doing it every year. And that's to pair up beer and cheese, which is becoming more and more popular these days. We predicted this at the very onset, didn't we? And it is becoming ever popular. Never mind your cheese and wine. This is your one-stop shop for cheese and beer. And I'll tell you what, Dave, why don't you start? How are you going to kick off your trio of cheeses and beers?
Now, I probably did the same thing last year. I wish I could remember what I did, but as we were just saying beforehand, I can barely remember what I did yesterday at the moment. So, but I thought I'll keep it simple. If it's a Christmas day and I'm sort of starting to drink craft beer, it's either going to be some sort of session pale to start or some sort of lager. So I've gone for the latter. I've got a lager.
So I presume what you're going to do here is you're going to start low in terms of ABV and work up, because that's what I plan to do as well. So that's good.
I have 2 low ABVs, and then, as we said at the top of the show, we've both got the Durham Imperious, which I'm probably not going to finish.
You will.
So I've got a Hell's Lager called Machina, and it is by Mondo.
Ah, right. Okay, yeah.
And I believe it is thanks to you that I have this beer.
Yeah, sourced by myself. Yeah.
Now, I like Mondo a lot. I don't actually have too much of them. The biggest experience I've had of Mondo is they do a sort of session New Englandy beer called Road Soda, which is very, very good. And you can get it at the Oval. Spent a day last year drink. They've got a craft bar there. Now, I unfortunately was the driver that day. I only got to have got a couple of friends who really enjoyed it. And I do mean really enjoyed it. So I like Mondo. I don't have too much Mondo. And Machina, I am going to pair with a cheese called Coat Hill Blue, which is a blue brie-style cheese. So it's soft cheese, it's blue, it's buttery, nice and light. And the idea being that the nice light lager will complement the cheese and bring out a bit of sort of the sweetness of the cheese as well. That's my theory.
Are you going to take a sip of beer first and then a bit of cheese, then a bit of both together to see how they marry up?
Let's say yes, because I just had a big sip of lager.
Exactly, yeah. Let's do it that way.
Lager's very nice. That's a good Hell's. Crisp, clean, as you'd expect.
Yeah, Mondo, you don't hear a great deal about Mondo, do you? But from what I've had as well, they're really solid, a really solid brewery. Sort of falls back into what we were saying earlier about how some breweries get this massive reputation that perhaps they don't deserve. And you've got a lot of smaller guys producing equally as good, if not better beer, and they just don't get the recognition they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not. They've used Hallertau, Mittel through, and tradition hops. So they've gone very heavy making this German Hells. And actually, it is good. It's not got that little bready bit at the end, which you get with some Hells. That works really well together.
Excellent.
I'm very happy.
Do you think that you can make a case for any cheese going with any beer?
I think, because I was sort of doing a bit of a reading around this before we did it, and there's definitely sort of every article that I read at least starts a bit like what you just said. You can make a case for any cheese going with any beer, really. I don't really know that you can get it wrong, can you? I mean, if you get a bad cheese, much like you get a bad beer, it probably won't work.
Yeah, I just wondered, because we've never actually come across what we thought was a bad combination, have we?
A bad pairing.
In the time we've been doing this.
Well, I'm quite happy with my first one. What's your first one?
Well, I have got a Farmhouse IPA from Rig and Furrow, who we like very much, don't we? Have you got this beer as well somewhere?
No, but I've got a Rig and Furrow for this.
Weird, isn't it? How weird is that? No, as usual, we've not collaborated on this, so we don't know what each other has got. Now, I'll tell you what, Dave, just to mix this up a little bit, I've got my 3 cheeses. I'm going to tell you what they are, and I'm going to get you to pick which cheese I should have with each beer. I have got a Bavarian Red, which is sort of soft and buttery.
Okay.
I have got an oak smoked cheddar.
Mm-hmm.
And I have got something called Sharpham Rustic, which is a semi-hard cheese with a refreshing light tang that delicately balances the richness of the milk.
I think the rustic should be going with the Farmhouse.
Yeah. I thought I'd ask and see what you think, because I'd sort of worked out which I was going to have with which, but yeah, that's what I decided as well. So I'm going to have a little bit of the cheese to start with, because I'm absolutely famished.
Very interested in the Bavarian Red, by the way. Looking forward to seeing what you make of that. Never heard of it. There's a cheese.
I wonder if that would have worked really well with the Schlenkler or something.
Ooh, yeah. I didn't think to get a Schlenkler, actually. I really could have done, because I know from experience of going German beer halls and things, they do love beer and cheese, and it always goes really well. So,
Right, well, first impressions of that cheese is it's quite muted. I like it. It's not pungent or too rich or anything. It is quite muted. I wonder if that would have gone better, actually, in retrospect. Having just said we've never picked a bad combo, that would have gone better with a big stout or something.
Okay.
Right, let's pour the beer.
Well, you will have the opportunity to have it with a big stout in due course.
Yeah. So this is a Farmhouse IPA, Creek, Citra and Mosaic, and it is 5.6%. Lovely and light, lots of bubbles.
You'll struggle to have a bad Rig and Furrow beer.
Light, refreshing. Does everything you want it to do. I wonder if, actually, it needs a cheese for this with a bit more punch to it.
Okay. They're both a bit sort of on the muted side then. The farmhouse beer isn't too sort of tangy, and I wondered if it was going to be a bit dry, and then that'd work with the
Yeah, I
cheese
expect
for
it
you.
to sort of almost be erring on the mixed firm sort of taste to it.
Especially when you said there was caviar in there as well.
But yeah, like you said, what we can do here is just mix them up as we go along, can't we? And try each cheese with each beer if we want to, if we don't feel we've found the right combination.
Yeah, and on that note, I will open my second, which is also Rig and Furrow. And I haven't had any Rig and Furrow for ages.
No, nor me.
They were a brew to me a good couple of years ago, I think, and I've always enjoyed them, but don't have them too often. And then I saw Andy at Hydrology had some Rig and Furrow, because he often has it, and he had a nut brown ale. I do actually have a little bit of a soft spot for a brown ale and a chestnut sort of beer. And definitely haven't had Rig and Furrow's take on it. And one of the cheeses I have, which is an old favourite of mine, is Jarlsberg, which is a soft mild cheese, and that's got a bit of a nutty flavour to it. So I thought, wow, this should absolutely be a dream.
So weird, because when we got these cheeses earlier today, we got some Jarlsberg as well. And that's in the fridge. I could have easily picked that up, but I didn't.
I think we've been doing this too long.
What beers are you looking forward to drinking over Christmas then? Your big stout stash. Is that going to get broken into or not, do you reckon?
When I was looking this morning to see what beers I was going to put for this, there were two beers that have been stood on the top of one of my fridges. And I thought, when am I going to get the chance to maybe just sit and go through one of these? And obviously, it's not as easy this year because of a certain addition to the family. So I can't really be sat sozzled in the corner.
Well, you can.
But, well, I can, but I don't think it'll go down very well. But we did find out, didn't we, sort of by hook or by crook, and whether it works for every beer, that you can potentially stopper these big stouts and they're not going to absolutely go to bits. So
somebody suggested to me we design a Daftaboutcraft stopper, and it can be the Dave B. Daftaboutcraft stopper.
That's a really good idea. I'd buy it. But yeah, there's two beers on top of my fridge which I'm looking at and I'm thinking about. One is by Torside. When I placed an order with them, I got one of these big sort of sharer bottles. I don't think I'd be sharing it with anyone, but I'm sort of eyeing that up. And then the other one is a stout from a brewery called Harrogate Brewery, I believe. I picked that up off a stall in Bury St Edmunds a few months ago. And again, it's big size. And I've been looking at that thinking, oh, that might work. So I'm hoping to at least make a small dent in my big stout stash. What about you?
Well, I wasn't really going to get any specific beers in for Christmas, but I did get the Siren series of their 4 stouts, their Caribbean chocolate cake ones, that series. I've seen some people say they're not very good, and I've seen some people say they're great. So as usual, everything is completely subjective. But I think I had them last year or the year before, so I thought I'd give them a go again and see what they're like. I was tempted a few times by various Wild beers, but my only issue there is, of course, Wild were taken over, weren't they, by Curious Brewing. But
yes.
I don't know whether you noticed the news that Curious Brewing have now been taken over by another brewery.
I didn't know that. I was going to say to you, did you see that St Ives, who recently featured on this podcast, have taken over Alphabet, or not taken over, sorry,
Yes.
but they've bought the Alphabet rights to
Yes.
their beers.
Yep.
So beers like Juice Springsteen, for example, are now going to be St Ives beers.
I think you're going to see more of this, especially brewers that go under, but they had a beer that was synonymous with them. Anyway, how is your old man's nutty brown ale?
It's quite a departure from doing a lager, as you'd expect.
It's got a lovely colour to it. It says on the can rich chestnut colour, and they weren't kidding. It's a lovely colour. Nutty, biscuity flavour. Yes, I wouldn't mind it being a bit more. I don't mind a chestnut beer really being chestnuts.
Okay.
Probably the star for me in this combination is the cheese, because I'd forgotten how nice Jarlsberg is. I haven't had any for ages. I used to have it a lot as a kid.
And is the cheese doing anything to bring more out of the beer, or vice versa?
If anything, the cheese is probably a little bit too dominant for the beer.
So having said...
you boxed that quite well, didn't you?
Yeah, having said that we've always found the perfect combinations, we're failing miserably on this occasion.
I think there's definitely a place for your pairings with Jarlsberg. It's such a nice cheese that I think it would... I wonder, hang on, in the interest of science.
Oh, you're going to go back to your first beer?
It potentially works better with the lager, because the lager's that bit lighter and just holds it up. I thought the nuttiness would come through from both, but it doesn't actually. The cheese is a bit too strong for the brown ale, but it does go probably a little bit better with the lager. But the brown ale itself is nice. I just wouldn't mind it being a bit more chestnutty. I've had sort of almost, if you've ever had the sort of chestnut browns on cask, that's the kind of where it's quite nutty for a long time. That's what I like.
Do you like roast chestnuts at Christmas?
Nope.
No, normally absolutely foul. But I just wondered if you did, having just talked about that.
No, it's funny. I'm not one of them people that likes that. I don't like the wet chestnut thing either, and all that.
No.
It doesn't do a thing for me. But I like a chestnut beer. I do like chestnuts, but not in the roasting on the open fire.
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds so Christmassy and so lovely, but is just not actually very nice.
No.
Right. Well, to my second beer, shall I? I have got... this one is thanks to our number one fan, Mark Ramsey of Aberdeen, who hates this feature, but has nevertheless sent a beer along that I'm going to use on the feature, so hopefully it might encourage you to like it a little bit more.
I believe that's called trolling.
He takes it all in very good humour, I'm sure. Now, I think he's not a fan of cheese, but he is a fan of this brewery whose beer he sent to me very kindly. So I thought this would be the ideal time to use it. And it's by the Dutch brewery Moersluitel, whose name I've probably just destroyed there.
Well, it didn't sound bad to me.
But this is a 7.5% coffee stout called Coffee Grinder. I think I know which one of my remaining two cheeses should go with this, but what do you think? So the oak smoked cheddar or the Bavarian red?
Instinct was red, because then you've got oak smoke, but the Imperium is going to be smoked as well. So maybe, well, not smoked, sorry, but you're going to have sort of similar tones from it.
That's
so is
true.
it going to complement or clash? So maybe the smoked? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I think I was erring towards the red, but the Bavarian red.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we're going to end up trying all these cheeses with all the beers anyway, aren't we? So let's go for the oak smoked cheddar. It may be just a bit too much to have that with the barrel-aged stout, hasn't it? So let's have that with this beer. I think what we're basically saying here is that get a load of cheese, get a load of beer, and just mix and match.
Exactly. There are no rules. Just have fun with it.
Because just because we say we like a certain combination means absolutely nothing.
I think as much as anything, it's just to try and show that there's so much beer and so much cheese that you can put it with nowadays. I could have spent half an hour working out which beers I've got to put it with, and I could have spent even longer with cheese. It was lucky that we went to a farm shop last weekend and I had the opportunity to get hold of some cheese. And even then I bought 3, I could have bought 12.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we went to 2 farm shops today, right? 2 farm shops fairly near to here. And they both got exactly the same cheeses.
Really?
How weird is that?
So it's a bit like craft beer fridge.
Exactly
where you can tell who's got the same suppliers.
Yeah, exactly what we said. It's like there must be a cheese version of Ibria or whatever delivering these cheeses to all the farm shops. I was a bit disappointed, really. I hoped to find different cheeses in each one of them, but I didn't. This pours out lovely and thick, and it's got that lovely light brown head on it.
I haven't had one of their beers in quite a long time, actually.
Well, you've got one here because Mark sent one for you as well, but I forgot to put it in your box. Yeah, happy Christmas, Dave. That is lovely. Yeah, that's really nice.
They're an interesting one, though, because they do a lot of stuff on Insta, and I wouldn't say they're gimmicky, but they certainly... Their wheelhouse is the stouts, fair enough.
Big, thick, oil slick stouts.
Yeah, and they seem to feels like sometimes they've dredged the bottom of what they can do with it. It seems they're sort of getting a little bit Asmundsen at times.
Well, I got a mate in Holland who absolutely swears by this brewery. He really loves it, and he only drinks beers on Thursday, Friday and Saturday, and every Thursday he'll send me a picture of another one of their beers and his little haul for that weekend, and he'll drink, and they're all double-digit imperial stouts. It's incredible. He starts cracking them open on a Thursday afternoon and spends all weekend going through them, but he absolutely swears by them. He was the guy I went out with the other weekend, by the way, in Birmingham.
Oh yes, well, I don't. You put pictures on a social platform. I know you didn't put it on the official Daftaboutcraft on Instagram or Facebook, but
Crikey.
It certainly looked like you had fun anyway.
I think we went to 7 or 8 pubs and had at least 1 pint in each, so it was a minimum of 7 pints. I know we had 2 in some. Not that I'm condoning drinking masses of beer, folks. It's just the way it turned out. We had some really lovely beer and some really awful beer.
Oh, right. Care to name names?
Oh, I always name names, yeah, not a problem. The worst pint we had was in the Actress and Bishop pub, and that was by Salopian, who do some really great...
That's a shame.
They do some really great cask. I think that maybe the beer hadn't been handled that well at the venue, because usually their stuff on cask is awesome, because you get it a lot round here.
Oh, well, that and their keg is...
their keg's great as well.
Their craft is quite sort of well regarded, so that's a surprising shame. But as you say, it could have been the establishment not looking after it.
Had a really nice glass house.
They're very solid now, aren't they? You struggle to have a bad beer off them. Whether you have anything world beater
exactly
is another question, but you struggle to have anything bad.
You have it and you think this is going to be a lovely solid pale, 4 out of 5 or whatever on Untapped, and it nearly always is. You're rarely disappointed by Glasshouse. This cheese, I think, is the right mix for this beer. The right combination. It's lovely. The smokiness is lovely on its own, but when you pair it with the beer, it seems to intensify the smoke flavour.
I will say my brown ale is getting a bit better, almost on its own. Without the cheese, it's perhaps warmed up slightly.
Must be the temperature.
I had it in the fridge and I did try and get it out a little bit in advance, but perhaps I didn't get it out quite early enough. But it's now starting to mellow out a bit, and that's kind of what I wanted to happen with that and the cheese.
I'm eating too much of this cheese. This is ridiculous. I saw a documentary the other day about festive treats and stuff, and one of them where they were talking all about cheese, and there was this guy, he'd have a cheese sandwich, but whereas you or me might have a slice, he'd have like an inch thick of cheese across the whole slice of the bread. Crikey.
The calcium alone isn't good. I mean, the fat's certainly not good, but...
I mean, he loved his cheese, but that's a bit of overkill, isn't it?
He's a bit. Overkill is what sort of happens this time of year, isn't it?
But I think he was actually eating this all year round, not just at Christmas.
Blimey.
That's my top combination so far, anyway.
So far, but we do now potentially have the star of the show left, don't we?
We do. Actually, before we go into this one, we've got the owner of Durham Brewery, Ellie, who's going to tell you all about the brewery and all about what they do and all about this beer in particular.
Hi, my name's Ellie. I'm the owner and the head brewer at Durham Brewery. Thanks so much for having me on Daftaboutcraft. Pleasure to speak to you all. Just a little bit about us. So Durham Brewery's been going now for nearly 30 years. So we're one of the older of the new wave of microbreweries in the UK. It was started originally by my mother, Christine, and stepfather, Steve Gibbs, and I joined the brewery about 20 years ago. Since retired and left it to me back in 2020, so you can imagine that was great timing. But it's been fun and a nice roller coaster of a ride over the last few years. So what we do mainly is cask beer. So we've got a massive range of traditional to big hazy IPAs to even fruited sour beers and traditional sort of bitters and stouts as well. On the cask side of things, we do a little bit of kegging as well, but what we're probably best known for, or where we're a little bit different from most of the breweries out there, is for our bottle conditioned beers. So this is a range of beers that was started originally by Steve, quite early days really. So we've been going since 1994. I think the first bottled beer was produced in 1998-99. And basically, Steve was getting a little bit bored of producing sessionable pale ales, which is obviously what sells predominantly still in the cask. And he loves his Belgian beers. So the range really started from a love of big, strong Belgian beers, but also traditional UK styles like barley wines and imperial stouts. And probably the very best beer that we produce for the bottle is the Temptation, which is a 10% imperial stout. That one was featured on a previous episode of Daftaboutcraft, so I'll let you listen to Dave and Dave's review of that beer. It's a big, rich, but ridiculously drinkable imperial stout. A few years ago, I think it was probably back in about 2015, I was talking to Mick actually at Free Trade in Oosburn, and he was telling me about some of his regulars who I think might have been sailors who would come in and have Temptation and a shot of rum in there. And I said, oh, wow, that sounds interesting. So Steve and I had a little chat about that and tried it for ourselves. And yes, it's very nice. So we thought, okay, let's look at doing some barrel aging with this beer. For barrel aging, you really need to have something strong to withstand the aging process, because obviously with wooden barrels, you've got air and oxidization, and because they're porous. And there's more risk of infection as well whenever you're using wood rather than stainless or plastic. But what it does impart is some lovely oaky notes from the wood itself, but also the spirit works extremely well with Temptation. And we've done a variety of different versions of Imperious over the last few years. So there's been rum in the past, obviously. We've done various different whiskey versions. We've done a bourbon. I wasn't such a big fan of the bourbon, but that might have been the barrels and the quality of those themselves or it could just be my personal taste. And I have to remember that I can't just make beers that I like to drink. The two that you're going to be reviewing today is going to be the last year's Irish whiskey version, so that's actually a vintage version now, and the Islay whiskey from this year. Hopefully you'll enjoy them as much as you did the rum version that you did on the previous episode with the Temptation. If anybody wants to purchase these, you can get them from our website, which is www.durhambrewery.com, and we do free delivery anywhere in UK mainland on orders over £45. It's really fast delivery as well, so you're generally going to receive your order in sort of 2 to 3 working days from when you've put it in. So it's not too late for Christmas if you fancy one of these with your Christmas dinner. Thanks for having us on. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right, well, thank you to Ellie there from Durham Brewery. It's really fascinating to listen to what Ellie had to say. And there was a couple of things afterwards she said she wished she had mentioned, one of which was the number of staff they employ. Now, Dave, how many members of staff, including Ellie, do you think they have?
Who was it who blew our minds? Stewart Brewing.
Yes, it was. Get these breweries who have, you think they're really big, but they're not big at all.
With that in mind, I'm going to say 4.
Oh, well, it's 6.
Oh, okay.
And the size of the brewery, 10 barrels, so not big.
I've had Durham Brewery in my head as being a bit bigger than they possibly are.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've got a lovely range of beers. They've been going for a long time, and you just expect them to have, a huge factory and loads of people, but it's not what they're about at all. Right, while Eddie was talking there, we poured our beers out. I've got the Islay barrel version of Imperious, and you've got the...
No, I've got the Islay, you've got the Speyside.
Oh, well, actually, this is a mistake then, because I've got the Islay as well.
Oh, so we both have Islay.
Oh, well, never mind.
We'll have to imagine what the Speyside tastes like then, and you can tell me what the Islay smells like, because I can sort of smell it, not really.
This is really interesting actually, because Dave was just saying there that he was talking that he can't smell this, and it has got the most barrel-aged nose you've ever smelt in your life.
It's so frustrating. Again, we were talking about the stopper. This is why it's getting stoppered. So when I can smell again, hopefully in the next couple of days, I can really appreciate it.
So actually, this hasn't worked out too badly, us having the same third beer. So what cheese have you got to go with this then?
Right, so I've gone back to the blue. I've gone blue again. Beauvale soft blue cheese, because I'm a sucker for blue cheese. I love it. The stinkier the better.
Especially if you can't smell it.
Well, yeah, I need something to cut through, don't I? So I thought, I'll go for another blue. I did toy with, and as we've said, I can easily do it. I did toy with the Jarlsberg because I thought that might work, strong flavour. But instead, I thought, no, I'll go for another blue, and hopefully that'll work as well.
I can see why you would go for that.
Oh, it's a nice cheese. It's sort of got enough blue to almost be Stilton, but the texture and the consistency is so much softer. It's not crumbly.
That does sound good.
Well, that works well because the cheese actually lingers. The taste, the saltiness taste lingers, and then you get to have that, which, interestingly, without harping on about the fact I can't smell, I think a beer like that highlights that perhaps my taste buds and that aren't quite in sync at the moment, because I know that's really good, but I can't probably appreciate just how good it is. So I think you're probably going to have to fill in the blanks. I know from taste that's really nice, but I suspect I'm missing a few tones in it.
You know, when we often say, and it's one of our major bugbears with these beers, is that, that tastes like it's only touched the inside of the barrel for a couple of days. This tastes like it's spent a long time in the barrel. It really has taken on all those tones of the whiskey.
Yeah, I think it has.
It's peaty, it's earthy, almost a tiny bit medicinal, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah. I get those tastes.
So I've got
It's very warming, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yeah. So I've got this Bavarian Red, which is a luscious and buttery creamy cheese from Bavaria. You'd be staggered to learn. It is very creamy. I just had a little bit on its own. It's beautiful, actually. It's the most intense of the three cheeses I've had is this one. Now I'm sort of thinking it's an intense beer and an intense cheese. Is that
going to work now?
Is that a bit of a clash? But let's try.
Just while you're trying it, just worth saying that lack of taste buds or full taste buds or not, this is incredibly smooth. This barrel-aged Imperious. Jeez Louise.
That's a lovely combination, actually. The beer takes away a bit of the butteriness of the cheese and the creaminess of it. It sort of dials it down a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that is a nice mix.
Oh, and interestingly, I was really happy with my blue with it as well. So it's quite sort of versatile in that sense.
So that just goes to show what we were saying before. You know, any number of cheeses could go with any beers.
As I say, the cheese I've got, the tangy saltiness hangs around, and then the beer washes right over the top of it and sort of moves you along. It's lovely.
Yeah, the beer on its own, incredibly good, quite complex. It is so flavoursome. The cheese just dials it down a little bit for me and helps. That's a help. Because I'm not a massive whiskey fan anyway.
I like whiskey, but if I have one, I'm having one. If I've drunk whiskey the day after, I'll know I've had it. And that's not sort of, because you had 17 of them. No, it just, it doesn't sit brilliantly with me. But I do quite like it, but not as much as I like rum.
I'm excited by Durham Brewery.
I am.
It's weird to say you can be excited about a brewery that has been going for 3 decades, but they're doing some really great stuff. I was talking to somebody last night about how traditional breweries make that crossover to catering for the more modern customer. And some of them really embrace it and they do it massively well. I was hearing that Hobson's, who we had on the podcast not that long ago, they're starting to do some craft stuff and they brought somebody in specifically to do it.
Well, when you were saying that brought me back to a chat we had with Hobson's when they released Dirty Gertie. And the thing I took from that was Nick acknowledged that there's things that Hobson's, with all their years of experience, do really, really well that craft breweries don't. But equally, there's things that craft breweries, because of how they do everything they do now, they do things really well that traditional breweries don't.
Yeah.
And haven't adapted to. And the best way to catch up or be part of that is to embrace it rather than just sort of be standoffish and say, no, we do cask and that's what we do. So I'm not at all surprised that they're doing that. And I'm hoping we're going to see more of that. And I'm also now going to be a little bit less dismissive, I think, when I'm looking for brew to me's. I often find that I'll find a brewery and I'll have a look and be like, what's your can offering? Because this is new, I haven't seen it. And then it's like, these guys have been going for 10 years. Is it just you playing lip service or are you taking it seriously?
we've seen this a few times now. Wensleydale, their craft offering is superb. Harry, you mentioned Harrogate earlier. They do some really good stuff. Timothy Taylor's, they don't do some really good stuff, as we found out this year. You've got to put the resources into making modern beers. You can't just think you're going to wing it and it'll all be all right on the day. You've got to have people who know what they're doing. And I believe the Hobsons have brought somebody in on the sales side of things from Brew York.
Interesting.
Which tells you, what their long-term aim is.
Yeah. No, and that's very smart. And never want to have that Timothy Taylor's Hopical Storm dark on my door again. What a dreadful beer that was.
I nearly put one in your box as a joke when I said it. I've still got one left.
Essentially the lump of coal in a craft beer box. Terrible beer.
The good thing to look forward to next year with Durham is they've got a couple of exciting beers coming out, including a 30th anniversary beer, which is likely to be an 8% banana bread beer.
Oh, wow.
That sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Count me in for that. I like a banana bread beer, actually. When years and years and years ago, when I first got into this, banana bread beer by Wells was sort of regarded as something a bit different. And I remember that was in my 1001 Beers to Try book.
Oh, yeah.
And it was quite an easy one to get hold of, actually. So I remember having that quite early on, and it did smell of banana, and it did taste a little bit banana, and it was different again. So
well, I thought when they released that for their birthday, it's a great time to actually get Ellie on from Durham and have a real good chat and chew the fat a little bit. So yeah, what do we think is going to happen in 2024? Where's craft beer going, Dave?
I suspect it's got to be. Well, I think it already has been a bit. Probably the back half of this year. It's probably got to be a bit of consolidation. We've seen just towards the back end there's been a couple of new hops have come out which will probably get used a bit more. Nectaron,
Superdelic as well just recently.
Exactly, so there is some scope. The pale movement I don't think is going to slow down.
I think I'm turning into a bit of a grumpy old man, but I get easily bored these days by it all. I go into a pub and I look at what they've got and I don't get excited, or I go onto a web shop and I just think, oh yeah, great, but there's nothing exciting me. I want something to excite me.
I think this goes again, we have this conversation, don't we? You and I probably consume it, and not as in physically consume, although we do that too, but consume craft beer at a higher rate than others. So it's now catering towards the casual person who turns up and sees a beer and goes, oh, what's that? I've got friends who've been going in the tavern in Ipswich recently, and the arcade have recently got Verdant on. You were talking about Verdant earlier, but they're all of a sudden very into them because they've had 2 or 3 good ones off them, and they're interested to know what they're going to have on their tap in terms of what's the next one. But you and I are probably a bit more like, well, what have you got from either a brewery we've never heard of, or maybe a style we've not really had?
I think that probably what will happen in 2024 is that craft beer will become more widespread consumed. Like we don't matter, us beer nerds, we're not going to keep breweries afloat in 2024.
No, we don't. I think we've worked this out ourselves, haven't we? All we want is the next big thing.
Yeah.
And what we want is one of the next big thing, and then we move on to one of the next big thing. Well, what they want is to repeat trade.
Craft beer can appeal to all people, not just young people with beards, old people, young people, everybody. It is accessible for all, and I see in 2024 that will happen more and more. More people will cotton onto it. And you go into any number of pubs now, and you can find craft beer a lot of the time. You don't have to go into a specialist pub, I find, more and more, or some sort of craft offering from some sort of traditional brewer.
It's a slower rate, but it is getting this way as well.
And you talked about that place near to you in Tried and Tested. I mean, go back 2 years, you wouldn't have expected that to be there, would you?
Absolutely not. And yeah, but I see what you mean. I think you're right. I don't know that at the moment, I think in terms of a consumer base, the scene has room to grow still. In terms of the brewing side of things and the beers themselves and the styles, it's a finite pool, isn't it? There's not too much left. I wouldn't say it's saturated, but there's, until some really old recipes are being dug up, which some breweries do.
Yeah, maybe we'll see more of that, old styles coming back again.
I think the new styles they are probably done to death at the moment.
There are so many hazy pale beers out there.
But they are your sales leader, aren't they?
This is what people want. And if people want that, breweries have got to make it. And I think you probably find a lot of breweries don't want to make beers like that. They want to make stuff that excites them, but they're caught in this sort of catch-22 where they've got to make the beer that sells to keep them going.
I suspect the lager revolution will keep getting bigger, actually. That might be the one area of growth, because a lot of breweries pride themselves now on how to make a good lager, because actually a good lager is not a simple thing. And that has been a growing thing of how to make a good lager. And Don Zoco have done it really from the get-go, but other breweries now, we saw it when we did our fest beers. Everyone did a fest beer, pretty much. And I think, when it gets to summer and everyone wants to do a Hells and things like that, that now might become a thing where people are really going to pride themselves on having the best craft lager around.
You might well be right there. And if you look at table beers as well, look how table beers came on in 2023. A hell of a lot. They really massively improved. There's more and more breweries out there doing, no and low alcohol beers. I think you may see a lot more breweries who we follow, they're making more and more lower alcohol versions of their beers. I hope so, because they're full of flavour these days. They're good to drink. It's not like the olden days where you used to go to the pub and have a can of, what was it, that awful...
Caliber.
Caliber, yeah. Caliber, goodness me. Yeah, things have changed a lot.
I think one area I'd like to see a little bit of development in is porters and stouts, not dessert stouts. Porters and stouts are still probably a little bit underused. I think there's still room for growth in those, and room for experimentation and really nailing them. And like the 4 or 5% stout can be a really good beer. It doesn't just have to be malty or roasty.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be 12%. It can be 4, 5, 6%. I think and it's probably people like us again thinking, unless it's double-digit ABV, it's not very good. It can be good.
I'm sort of off those really. I know they are good, but I'd quite enjoy having a 5% stout from time to time if it was going to just have a better flavour profile than going for the roasted malt or coffee, or saying it's chocolate or something when essentially it's roasted malt and that's what you're going to give off as a chocolate. Like, do something different at that ABV if possible. Be my request for 2024.
Yeah, it would be great to see more brewers doing more experimental stuff, but in this day and age when they've got to keep the keep the lights on, I'm not sure we're going to see that much, except breweries who have tap rooms, because they can get rid of their core stuff through the tap room and then do experimental stuff, which they can also pass through the tap room on a small level. But I mean, what I'd say to people listening to this now in 2024 is support your local breweries and just give them all the help you can. Be there in their tap rooms, buy their beer, because it makes a difference, doesn't it? And without people in there drinking the beers, they're not going to exist. Drink as much as you can. Drink local. So look, we've had 3 great beers, 3 great cheeses. Not necessarily paired with the right beers and the right combinations, but I think we've enjoyed what we've done there.
Yeah, I think we got there in the end.
I think we've started and ended with the right beers anyway. We've gone in the right order.
Yeah, definitely.
And we will see you in 2024 sometime during January. We've already got an interview lined up with Hideaway Brewery. So if you're interested in them, make sure you listen to episode 55 and you can hear all about them and our usual features and loads more. But until we see you then, have a happy Christmas and all the best for 2024.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.